heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Let's disturb the peace. We're trying to mind too cool. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Disturb the peace. We're trying to mind too cool. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Let's disturb the peace. We're trying to match your cool. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Disturb the peace. We're trying to match your cool. Disturb the peace. Let's disturb the peace. Disturb the peace. From heaven, there's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Let's disturb the peace. We're trying to mind too cool. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Disturb the peace. We're trying to mind too cool. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Let's disturb the peace. We're trying to match your cool. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Disturb the peace. We're trying to match your cool. Disturb the peace. Let's disturb the peace. Disturb the peace. From heaven, there's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Let's disturb the peace. We're trying to mind too cool. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Disturb the peace. We're trying to mind too cool. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Let's disturb the peace. We're trying to match your cool. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Disturb the peace. We're trying to match your cool. Disturb the peace.
Representative Marlon Stutzman, welcome to Disturbing the Peace. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Great to be with you, John. Thanks for having me on.
It's an honor to have you. Now, Jamal Bowman may not like you because I was preparing to do this interview, and all of a sudden, the fire alarm went off, and I'm like, man, now I know that I'm not omnipresent. I can't be in multiple places. Wrong black man here. I didn't pull the fire alarm. What's going on, my friend?
He's stalking you, must be. He's in the building somewhere.
Right. Hey, he wants my role. He wants my job because he was ousted, but he's not going to have it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Hey, thank you so much for joining the show. I want to get your feedback on what's going on with the Iranian strike. Are we at war or are we on our way to war?
I think we've been at war for 40 years, John. This Iranian regime sees themselves as religiously dominant in the Muslim world and, of course, around the world. And, their chants have been going on for years and years. Death to Israel, death to America. The Ayatollah and the religious leadership in that country has held that country hostage for 40 years. And, I was actually just watching some speeches about 15 years ago, not quite that long, by former Senator Marco Rubio, who was talking about the deal that at the time President Obama was making with the Iranians. And we, sent them billions and billions of dollars of cash. And Marco was saying, these guys are going to build more rockets, more nuclear capability, more equipment, boats. They're going to build up their infrastructure, their military infrastructure, so that way they can eventually, attack those neighbors around them who they would like to eliminate, Israel being one of them. Of course, have rockets to be able to threaten Europe. And they were at that point with their ballistic missile inventory, and then ultimately build a nuclear bomb so that way they would have leverage over not only the region there in Europe, parts of Asia. Ultimately, America was on their hit list. And so I believe that this is just coming to an end. This is a war that's coming to a conclusion because we've got a president like President Donald Trump who's willing to make the hard decisions and let our military do what they do best, and that's go in and get the victory.
So we've been at war for about 46 years. I was born in 1984. All right. So I wasn't even born when all of this stuff was going on. But it seems like we have a lot of revisionists who disagree with what's taking place and what's going on right now. We have a lot of people on the right, some commentators who are saying that we are just pushing the agenda of Israel. What do you have to say to that?
No, we're pushing the agenda for the American people. We're pushing the agenda for security and freedom. Those values are rooted in Judeo-Christian values. I'm not going to apologize for that the Christian faith is a faith of freedom, of peace, of love. But when you have brutal dictators who are not only killing they're not only killing other people, they've killed the at least 600 Americans directly. And then if you want to go back to the Iraq war, to other attacks from the Iranian government through their proxies, whether it was the Houthis, whether it was through Hamas, whether it was through Hezbollah, that's one of the things that the Iranian regime has done so well is hide behind these proxies that go out and do their bidding. And, they are the leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world. They're part of the axis of evil that President Bush called them back in the day. And so you have to look at the entire context here, John. And I think that's what some of these people are missing. I was talking to some young people just recently, and they're having all these questions about Israel and that Israel's telling America what to do and this and that. It's like, no, wait a minute here. You know what? First of all, I believe that the Jewish people have a right to the land in the Middle East known as Israel. There's always going to be skirmishes over the boundaries and things like that. But biblically, they have a right to it. We know that from history. And America is a country of peace. We're a country that wants peace, and we're one of the most grateful, most giving countries in the world. And so this is not just about Israel. This is about other allies in the region as well. Israel's our greatest ally right there, but look at Saudi Arabia, how far they've come in the last 20 years. They were what many of us accused of the hotbed for the 9/11 attacks with terrorist training camps. You look at Qatar. I think Qatar is actually maybe moving our direction to the West a little bit more. We need to keep an eye on them and their funding mechanisms and what they do related to the Muslim Brotherhood. But look at the UAE. Look at, Syria might even be coming more towards the West. We have to keep a close eye on Turkey, which obviously is a part of NATO. But if you look at that entire region, John, so many good positive things are happening. And that's all because people are starting to build trading relationships, security relationships, and the Abraham Accords are a leading part of that, and that's because of President Trump's vision and his execution to getting a job done that's going to bring peace to more people in that part of the world, and especially safety for America.
President Trump has said for a number of years that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. What proof do we have that Iran has nuclear weapons?
Well, we have incredible intelligence gathering operations in the Middle East. We have satellites in space. We are able to watch, what goes on around the world. And, just for example, the president talks about the Golden Dome project, about making sure that we keep an eye on what China's doing. China's building up an incredible large inventory of ballistic missiles, and they will have the ability to reach out all the way to the United States. And so the fact that we have technology in space, of course, on the ground, in other ways through the air of gathering data and intelligence, we can see what's happening. And so I'm just, again, we have watched this Iranian regime trying to leverage or build out a nuclear facility by saying, oh, it's for energy purposes for the Iranian people. But we would know ultimately this is all about a weapon that they would use to leverage against peace-loving people. And that's what we see. I encourage young people to travel to the Middle East, anybody for that matter, to travel to the Middle East to see, what happens there. There are people there who truly want peace and want to rebuild the land. But then there's also people there who want to destroy the land and keep it under the oppression that it has endured for years and years. And so this is a fight between good and evil. And we know for a fact that there are leaders that are part of the Islamic religion that are willing to oppress people. And we need to partner with those who oppose that sort of ideology and stand together and say, we're not going to let the education system in the Middle East teach the children over there to hate Israelis or to hate Americans or to hate Europeans. We want to see people that are going to teach to grow to be productive adults, to grow and be productive communities, and ultimately productive countries where we can build together as human beings rather than being at war.
It's clear that we have enemies from without and enemies from within.
Yeah.
When you look at the current public school system landscape, you have many school districts that are allowing students to leave class to go out and protest against ICE. You have people who are a part of the Muslim false brotherhood who are shouting death to America. How can Americans best ascertain and comprehend what's really going on and the threat that we are under?
Boy, that's great commentary and a great question, John. I tell you, I am more concerned, about the threat here at home long term. Iran was a threat in the short term. If we dealt with it, it would have been a long-term problem if we would not have dealt with it. But the fact that President Trump has decided to deal with Iran and take the head off the snake is going to make that a short-term problem compared to a long-term problem that would affect our country and Europe and the Middle East for years and years to come. But the threat here in America is growing, from a variety of ways. First, whether it's open border policy, and we have ISIS, cells that are moving into the United States. We have those who are sympathizing, those who are joining that side of the war, of the battle that we're dealing with. It's hard for me to even understand and fathom why any human being who's living in the United States and sees the freedom that we have, the ability to, maybe it's to buy a home, to build a small business, to be a teacher, to be a doctor, to be a lawyer, to be a truck driver, to be a farmer. and to build something. That's what we have in America, which, we don't, people don't always understand how blessed we are as Americans, but there are people that come here to do harm to us. They want to destroy our way of life because they hate good. And so that's why I think, what we do here at home is critically important. DHS is been without a budget now for the past several weeks because Democrats in Washington are trying to leverage that funding against ICE and the immigration policies that the administration is carrying out. I tell you that we know there's a threat here at home, and we need to be super careful in making sure that our men and women out on the streets keeping us safe have the funds that they need to be sure that Americans are safe, especially knowing that the attack in Iran could spur any, sort of terrorist cell that's then building up here in America, that they may all of a sudden go active. And so we've got to all be very vigilant and have our heads on a swivel to be sure that we keep our eyes open here at home as well.
I know you only have a few more minutes left, but it's clear that we are headlong in the midst of the midterm elections. The general election is coming around the corner, and we have all of these threats within and from without. But it doesn't seem like we can even pass a simple voter ID, as it relates to election integrity and making sure that we get rid of the gross fraud that takes place. Go figure. Now, Jasmine Crockett is talking about fraud and she was cheated.
Right.
But what should we do? How can we get that bill passed? What is going on? We're in power, as Republicans and conservatives, but we can't get that bill passed.
Yeah, no, it's crazy too. I mean, that's the one that you think in fact, we know from polling, Republicans and Democrats both agree that you should be a citizen of the United States in order to vote, and that you should be able to show a photo ID to show and prove that you are who you say you are. Good friend of mine, Pastor Lorenzo Sewell in Detroit, he and I have been working together. His congregation, several people in his congregation there in Detroit went to go vote back in the 2020 election and 2022 election. They get to the polls and they were told, "Oh, you already voted." And these are Americans that are practicing their God-given right to vote in this country. And in here, somebody had already stolen their ballot, stolen their identity, and voted for them. And so they're filing a lawsuit in Michigan. We have got to find a way. We've already passed it through the House of Representatives 3 times to show photo ID when we go to the ballot box to vote. But we have a hurdle in the Senate. And so Senate Republicans have to realize that the American people gave Republicans a majority in the Senate, and they expect us to govern. And if you're going to let some rule keep us from passing such an important piece of legislation to protect the integrity of our elections, then shame on them. I mean, we've got to get this done. I know President Trump is pushing them. My hope is that Senator Thune and Republicans do the right thing, because if they don't, and if the election we see fraud and people taking advantage of the election system in states like Michigan or California or New York, Illinois, and other places, trust is going to break down in this country, and then we are going to be a divided country. And that's a dangerous place for all of us. So that's why we've got to get this done sooner rather than later over in the Senate.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I want to respect your time. Maybe next time Jamal Bowman won't pull the fire alarm, and I'll have more time with the great Marlon Stutzman. Thank you so much for joining me, my friend.
Thank you, Pastor. Great to be with you today.
God bless you. Take care. Hey, well, listen, it's an honor to have this brilliant man of God on the show, Representative Marlon Stutzman. I agree with everything that he had to say. I want to show you this video clip now. I didn't want to abuse his time. He had a hard out, but Jamal Bowman came to my studio and pulled the fire alarm, man. I mean, what's going on these days? And y'all remember the story of School Hall Jamal, Representative Bowman. I mean, I guess to botch a vote or, to gain an advantage, he pulled the fire alarm one day in Congress. I mean, why would you even do that? But he's out, but he needs to stay out of my building as well. Take a look at this video of Donald J. Trump. People are saying that Trump is bought by Israel, and that his framework of wanting to make sure that Iran, doesn't get nuclear weapons and they do heinous things towards our country. They're saying it's all new because Israel has pulled him into this. Take a look at this video clip from 1980. Take a look.
When you get the respect of the other countries, then the other countries tend to do a little bit as you do, and you can create the right attitudes. The Iranian situation is a case in point. That they hold our hostages is just absolutely and totally ridiculous. That this country sits back and allows a country such as Iran to hold our hostages, to my way of thinking, is a horror. And I don't think they'd do it with other countries. I honestly don't think they'd do it with other countries.
Obviously, you're advocating that we should have gone in there with troops, etc., and brought our boys out.
I absolutely feel that, yes. I don't think there's any question, and there's no question in my mind. I think right now would be an oil-rich nation, and I believe that we should have done it, and I'm very disappointed that we didn't do it, and I don't think anybody would have held us in abeyance. I don't think anybody would have been angry with us, and we had every right to do it at the time. I think we've lost the opportunity.
Well, there you have it, my friends. President Trump isn't bought by the Israeli government or by Benjamin Netanyahu. This was in 1980. He said it then, and he's saying it now. He doesn't want Iran to have nuclear weapons because they believe religiously that they have the right to decimate the infidels, all non-Muslims. And so, yes, we need to keep them at bay and push back whenever we can. Now on Disturbing the Peace, I want to bring on my guest, Ain McIntyre. Thank you so much, my friend, for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Ain, man, it's good to see you again. Listen, we have enemies from within and enemies from without. If you had to list our top 3 enemies that America is facing today, what would you say we should be most concerned about?
I'd say it'd be the American deep state, the American Democratic Party, and then the American Republican Party in that order. I think most of our problems, unfortunately, tend to be very domestic. I understand very much Donald Trump's current concern over Iran. Iran is a very dangerous country, one which shouldn't have a nuclear weapon, and I think he's been very clear on that, and that's why it made perfect sense, I think, to go out and bomb Iran's nuclear sites at that time. I think that there was a current concern by many people, myself included, that might turn into a larger conflict, but very grateful that Donald Trump did not do that at that time. However, we have to remember that a large part of what Donald Trump was elected to do was clean up America's mess, the problem we have here. Drain the swamp, get rid of the deep state, deal with all of the domestic issues that have been ignored by many, many previous administrations. And he's done that in many different areas. The fact that the border is closed and that deportations are occurring, the fact that we are arresting the kind of people who storm churches and try to intimidate Christians, these are huge wins that would not have happened under other GOP presidents. But I do hope that ultimately the focus does return back to the domestic side. I want to continue to see those wins racked up by the Trump administration. And I do worry that the current conflict might distract from the ability to secure those victories, or at the very least to make them the focus of things like the midterms when those elections come around.
You mentioned the threat of the current GOP or Republican Party. Can you unpack that some more?
Sure. I think that it's very clear that Donald Trump was in no way the favorite candidate of the establishment GOP. I don't know if you remember this, but he shocked people back in his original run for president by telling Jeb Bush to his face that fighting regime change wars was stupid and silly and a terrible idea. Donald Trump set the very idea that we should have foreign policy restraint, that we should be closing the borders. These are all things that were not necessarily dominant ideas inside the United States. Tariffs, protectionist ideas when it comes to American employment. He radically shifted what the GOP believed. And to be clear, for most GOP senators and congressmen, he didn't. Many of them stayed off the MAGA train. They either stayed never Trump or they came over and said, okay, I guess Trump's fine. But they were really working against him. It's very clear that a lot of Republicans just want to run out the clock. I mean, look, we can't even get the SAVE Act passed right now, even though we control the White House, both houses of Congress, and basically the Supreme Court. How is that possible that we can't pass a phenomenally popular piece of legislation when we control everything? Donald Trump is still waiting for many of his nominees to be brought forward and to be approved by the Republican Senate. How can that possibly be true when we're this far into his presidency? It's very clear that while much of the GOP will mouth loyalty to MAGA, at the end of the day, they're hoping that Donald Trump and his voters go away so they can get back to business as usual.
I hate to admit, but Aaron, you're on to something. What you're saying is evidently true. How do we have so much power, executive branch, judicial, supposedly, and in Congress, but we can't get a simple bill passed that, the majority of Americans agree with? It's just asinine. Now moving to an additional threat that we see, and it's fraud and what's happened in Minneapolis. I want to play you a series of videos and get your reaction to it. We'll play the first video now.
Do you believe the 70,000 strong Somali community as a whole has made a positive impact on your state?
I do.
So you'd be the opinion, fair to say, that the Somali community has successfully assimilated and is making Minnesota better?
Yeah, I believe they're on that path. Okay. Yes.
I'm just curious by what metric you'd come to that conclusion. I just looked at some hard data. And do you have any idea what percentage of the native-born Minnesotans, all races, live in poverty in your state right now?
I don't have specifically.
I'll share it with you. It's 8%. For the Somali community, it's 52%. How about receiving food stamps?
I don't know.
All right, I'll run it down with you. It's 7%, and then compared to 54% of the Somali community, and then don't have at least a high school diploma. For all Minnesotans, it's 5%. Somali community, it's 39%. One family member at least on Medicaid, it's 18% for Minnesota, 73% for the Somali community, and receiving welfare of some form, it's 21%. And that's 81% for the Somali community. Governor, do you happen to know what the percentage is of all those who have currently been charged in this staggering social services fraud scheme were native-born Minnesotans? What percentage?
I do not have that.
I think it was 85 out of 98, which comes out to 13% Minnesotan and 87% Somali Minnesotan. So I think this is an instance, perhaps, of where woke gets slapped by data. Governor, there's been billions stolen over 7+ years right under your nose. And really, there's only two explanations. It's either you were in on it or you weren't smart enough to see it. It's either criminal negligence or wild incompetence. And the only way this kind of fraud can reach this scale is if there's people in power that are colluding and collaborating and willfully blinding themselves to the realities around them.
People in power colluding. People in power colluding. What say you?
No, I think it's very obvious that the Democratic Party has structured itself around the idea that it's going to bring in these ethnic blocs and use them as wedges when it comes to local and regional politics and even national politics. They promise these people who are obviously entirely dependent on them everything. I mean, we just saw them run down the stats on how insane the fraud has been, how much money has been shoveled over to these communities on purpose, has been funneled to them by Democratic politicians. It's very obvious that even if they are not directly one-on-one involved in this, they're ultimately the ones directing it. Because let's just be honest, the Somalian community is not exactly full of rocket scientists. They're not great at figuring this stuff out. They probably had to have someone who walk them through the steps on how to make this happen. And that's why the entire community kind of plugs in and starts funneling that money through. It's a perfect classic mechanism of high and low versus middle, using new populations to come in who are entirely dependent on the ruling class to push out the middle class and exert influence over the political system. I think that anyone who's telling themselves the Democrats weren't entirely complicit in everything that happened here, it's just ridiculous.
The Democrats believe that it's racist to identify fraud. Take a look at this next clip.
Yep. And would you agree that as governor, ultimately you're responsible if tax dollars are defrauded?
Yes, I would agree.
Yep. Would you also agree that calling somebody racist is a serious accusation?
If they are racist, I think it's probably
I'm asking
accurate.
you, is that a serious accusation to make about somebody?
I think it's just an observation of reality.
All right, well, let's go there. Is it racist for a government official to identify fraud?
No.
No. Is it Islamophobic
To identify fraud?
to identify fraud?
No, I don't believe it would be.
How come multiple whistleblowers have said that your administration told them not to say anything about widespread fraud across multiple agencies because doing so would be considered racist or Islamophobic?
I can't speak to it because it's not anything I would say.
Well, that's what your administration has said and has told whistleblowers. And as you just testified, the buck stops with you. That's what you stated in your statement whenever you announced you weren't running again.
He said it. He said it, Aaron. He said it. He knows that it's true. He's been protecting his derriere. What do you think?
I think this is just the basic response every Democrat has to any charge against them, that ultimately it's racist and therefore you can't say it anymore. When you make this a taboo charge, a charge that shuts down all discussion, all thought, it's just a thought terminating cliche. It's incredibly powerful. If you have a weapon like that, you're going to use it. But it's been getting weaker and weaker, and for obvious reasons. Look, it's an insult to the American Black community to think that just because Somalians come in and happen to have slightly darker skin, that all of a sudden they somehow share some kind of struggle or history with each other. They don't. They're entirely different peoples any more than I share, every aspect of my ancestry from Europe, that somehow I believe or, have a similar experience to every single person in Germany or something. It makes no sense. Ultimately, there are people in America who have earned their place here, whatever their color of skin. Their history goes back, their heritage goes back. They're part of the structure of our community, and those are the people that we should be helping. We shouldn't be bringing entire populations in who are going to be dependent on us, and we certainly shouldn't allow them to steal some kind of historic guilt from other populations that live in the United States just because they happen to have a different color of skin. It's an absolutely ludicrous strategy, and nobody should be falling for it.
It gets worse, Aaron. Let's go a step further here with Tim Walz, Governor Tim Walz, condoning fraud. Take a look at this.
The payments are restarted. Why didn't you tell the truth about why you restarted the payments?
Well, Chairman, we did tell you. And Feeding Our Future grew because of the pandemic. And
I didn't ask that question. I said, why didn't you tell the truth about why you restarted the payments? The payments stopped because there were concerns, obviously, it wouldn't stop the payments. Then they're restarted a month later. What was the reason for restarting the payments?
My understanding was the agency believed that the court had required them to make those payments.
And that was false, wasn't it? You repeated that. You said that, didn't you? You said that's why the reason you said the reason you restarted is because the court ordered you to do so. Is that right?
I don't believe that is settled yet, to the best of my knowledge.
Well, I think it is, because the court did something that I don't know if I've ever seen it. They issued a statement saying you were wrong in what you were saying. This is from the court. It says, Feeding Our Future versus Minnesota Department of Education, correcting reports and statements by Governor Tim Walz concerning orders issued by the court. Here's what the judge says. Governor Tim Walz told the media that the Minnesota Department of Education attempted in payments to FOF because of possible fraud, but that Judge Guthman ordered payments to continue in April 2021. Next sentence. That is false. So you said something that wasn't true. He further states this, Judge Guthman, the court says this, Judge Guthman never ordered the Department of Education to resume payments to Feeding Our Future in April 2021 or at any other time. So I want to know, why didn't you tell the truth?
Congressman, the attorneys at the Department of Education interpreted that differently. Both of those judges are no longer on the bench. And I think that interpretation.
The very first sentence, the first 7 words. This is not some unnamed source talking to the New York Times. This is not some anonymous source talking to whatever your Minnesota Star Tribune or whatever your paper is. This is the court speaking. First sentence, first 7 words. Due to inaccurate statements by the governor, Ramsey County District Court judge has issued and authorized this following news release. That's pretty straightforward. So the court's lying?
I can't tell you, Congressman, but the interpretation
Somebody's lying, because you can't say the court ordered you to restart the payments, and then the court says we didn't order you to restart the payments. So either you're lying or the court's lying. And I'm just asking you, which one is it?
I just simply know what the attorneys at the agency believed, that it was a misinterpretation. And I would note that those payments.
Could it be you were trying to hide behind the court, Governor? Could that maybe be the reason why you issued the statements you did and why the court had to do something you never see done before? They issue a press statement saying you're wrong. The governor is wrong. His statement is, their words, not mine, false. Could that be the reason?
That was not the interpretation of the attorneys. And you know, court work, you can appeal those, Congressman, as you well know. I'm sure
Is it all about politics, Governor?
No, it's about taking care of our people, which Minnesota does better than anyone else.
3 million, the behavioral intervention program went from 3 million to 400 million in 5 years. The housing stabilization went from 2.6 million to 104 million.
So what we see here is, once again, what we've always seen with white liberals using blacks, minorities, now in this case, Somalians, to push their agenda. What do you think about this?
Well, I think, unfortunately, for a very long time, it's been incredibly effective for the left, but luckily that strategy seems to be coming apart to some degree. Of course, Tim Walz is a corrupt idiot, so it's pretty easy to make him look bad on television. He makes himself look bad pretty much all the time. However, while I do appreciate the thorough kind of drubbing he got in these hearings, I'd like to see the Republican Congress do more on these issues. We should be shutting down even more immigration. We should be shutting down even more of these programs. It's not some accident that these exist. There's no accident that illegal immigrants regularly come to the United States and immediately get access to things like healthcare, business loans, home loans, preferential treatment over native-born Americans. For all of these programs, this could be ended. We don't have to have this stuff. So while it's great to point out the fraud and abuse, and I'm 100% for it, I'm glad that Tim Walz is being eviscerated on television over this. Ultimately, we need to see Republicans do more. Donald Trump is helping to shut down the illegal immigration, but we also need to see legal immigration, refugee programs, and these things addressed. We need to make sure that when people do come to the United States, they are given the privilege of coming to this country. They are net positives for us. We are being benefited by their presence. They should come in and already have an established financial base. They should already be, it should be unnecessary for them to draw upon welfare, get preferential loans or education. America is not a stepping stone for you. You should be coming here to better us. We should only be allowing people into the United States that benefit our population and our people. We should not be allowing the Democrats to use immigrants and minorities as some way to funnel money into their corrupt programs.
You're right about that. I agree with that 100%. Let's just turn to just getting your assessment on the race in Texas. James Talafrico, beat Jasmine Crockett. Now, Jasmine Crockett has been the chick at the theater, the person on the merry-go-round, going around and round and round, around and round and round on the, on the unicorn, at the circus. She's been the person that was willing to do the bidding of the white liberals' public theater. But when they got to a place where they were sick and tired of her, they disposed of her as a useful idiot. And now we are left with someone that I believe is 100 times worse than Jasmine Crockett. Now, he's calm. He speaks with a sweet tone, no pun intended. He knows how to use the Bible to push his diabolical, damnable heresies. He's good at that. But Jasmine Crockett, all along, she was willing to put her neck on the line for her party. But now she's been disposed of. What are your thoughts on this? What does this say about the Democrat Party, not only in Texas, but in the U.S.?
It means they're trying to make a correction. I think it's very clear for a lot of people that many of the politicians that came about in the woke era, people like AOC, the Squad, Jasmine Crockett, they wanted to be influencers before they wanted to be statesmen. These were people who ultimately wanted to raise their profile. They wanted to be social media stars. They wanted the clicks and attention and the clips online, but they weren't really interested in governing or anything like that. That was popular at the time. It got people far enough, but ultimately it seems like that has run out for the Democratic Party. They're starting to realize that there was a mistaken leaning so hard into that understanding of what politicians should be. And they're trying to make corrections, slowly turn the ship. I think ultimately they're going to fail on that, actually. I don't think that a kinder, gentler, more moderate version of the Democratic Party is actually what their base wants at all, or what they will ultimately be able to produce. And in fact, I think, obviously, as you pointed out, the people that they're replacing are in no way actually kinder or gentler. They just know how to control themselves a little bit. They're not going to play these roles that are going to get them all this attention. They're more interested in kind of entering into a more classic representation of the political paradigm. Again, I'm not sure if they're going to be able to make this correction on the left, but they surely see that that is the direction that they might be able to go, and therefore kind of pull back from some of the woke madness that had seized the party. And I think that's ultimately why we're seeing people like Jasmine Crockett slowly get pushed out.
Now, when a Pee Wee Herman unicorn becomes a correction for the Democrat Party, moving towards Talafrico and away from Jasmine Crockett, when that is their correction, come on now, Orrin, you mean to tell me that a man that believes, that God is a she, that's a correction?
Again,
or are they saying that this is really what we think about Jasmine, right? I mean, what is the message? Because theologically speaking, the venom and the poison of Talafrico is much more severe than a loudmouth, ghetto, ratchet, bambling buffoon in Jasmine Crockett. It's 100 times worse, because now we're delving into the spiritual implications, because at the end of the day, this is more about good versus evil, less about Republican versus Democrat. But she now she's pushed out, and now we have a pervert. Someone stop me from saying that. A pervert. we have a royal pervert. I was hard on Jasmine. I was, because I thought she embarrassed Black people. That's really why. She could have toned it down and talked in a nicer tone, all of that good stuff. But now we have a person who is talking in a soft tone, but just because you are whispering lies doesn't make it more truthful. What do you think?
Oh, I agree entirely. To be clear, it's not that he is less dangerous or less evil in any way. I simply think they're switching out the packaging on that poison. You might be right that ultimately he's even worse due to how theologically corrupt his beliefs are, but that's not how most Democrats are evaluating their candidates in the slightest. Sadly, that's less and less how Americans evaluate their candidates. You and I probably wish that was a radically different standard, but that is the world we live in at the moment. It really is about the affectation, the presentation, how you bring those ideas to the forefront. And even if his ideas are more malicious and more sinister, if he does it with a calm smile, if he does so with a demeanor and the right vocabulary and the correct presentation, he's simply going to be more effective for the Democrats. He'll be less offensive to many different communities, including your own. And so I think that's the shift that they're looking for. It's not that they're dialing back the woke. It's not that they're dialing down the horrible policies or beliefs that they're ultimately pushing, but they are recognizing that the marketing strategy was at least itself well overwrought. And I think that's part of the correction that you're seeing. But I think there are many, many reasons to find Jasmine Crockett embarrassing, and the Democrats recognized at least a significant portion of them. So they swapped in someone who could sell something perhaps even more dangerous, but do so more smoothly.
Jasmine Crockett was indeed a Black cancer, and Talafrico is a white devil. I think more people need to understand what is taking place. New packaging. You described that perfectly. New packaging and what's going on. And sadly, in a state like Texas, strong, tough, hardworking, blue-collar Texas, Even Texas is buying wooden nickels. Orrin, thank you so much for joining the show. I always love dialoguing with you. You're so winsome and articulate, and you speak the truth with power. I need to have you back on soon. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I said it. I said it, and I'm not taking it back. Jasmine Crockett, Black Cancer. Talafrico, White Devil. I said it. It's true. It's true. Talafrico is going to be 100 times worse. No makeup, none of the obnoxious eyelashes, none of that, none of that. None of the, you know, all that stuff, none of that, none of it. But he's going to sit there on camera nicely and calmly, like Barack Obama, you know, let's just be honest, like Barack Obama, and sweetly poison the hearts and the minds of Americans. Listen, if you're going to take my life, whether you do it screaming at me or whether you do it kindly, you're still trying to eliminate me. I'm not less dead based upon how you treat me in the process. Talafrico will go down in history as 100 times worse than Jasmine Crockett. I was hard on Jasmine, and I'm going to be hard on Talafrico. And I need to hear from all of the Christians in Texas. You know, I want to hear from the evangelicals. I want to hear from these church-going people. I want to hear from all of these devout lovers of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. What do you think about Talafrico? That should be the litmus test. Do you agree with him? Do you support him? Do you believe that, you know, the story of Mary, that there's included within there an out and an option for eliminating children? This is the ideology of Talafrico. Is that what you think? And this guy said that we should just keep the border open and treat it as if it's your home and you have a doormat. That's what he thinks. Should be addressed. We should talk about it. We shouldn't mince words when it's time to call a spade a spade. I am going to call a spade a spade. Yes, Jasmine Crockett, in my closing, was a Black Cancer. But Talafrico is indeed a white devil. Now, I've never met a white devil. Never. I haven't. But we just did. A real one. And he was able to get a record amount of support while diminishing the very word of God in a red state. God forbid. My friends, I want to now share with you a program and an opportunity that has the ability to transform your life for good. All right, this is a divine transformation. It's going to help you deal with your debt burden. Let's face it, if you have distressed or defaulted private student loans, nobody, and I say nobody, is coming to bail you out. And bankruptcy is not an option, but you can take charge of your situation by contacting Y-Refi. Can you imagine being debt-free and not living under this burden anymore? The first step is contacting Y-Refi. If you, yes, you go to yrefi.com, you can read testimonials from other people who have been where you are. You're not the only one, my friend, that's dealt with the gnawing pain and dreams and nightmares of burdens that come from being, embroiled in debt. And you can look at these testimonies at yrefi.com, and you can see how other people have escaped. You can even see what their monthly payments were versus what they are now. Y-Refi offers a 3-minute rate check without any credit impact. Bad credit is accepted. This is not AI, my friends. I just said it. A preacher just said it. Bad credit is accepted. That's law and gospel. They will help you out. Do you have a co-borrower? Refi can get them released from the loan. You can give mom and dad a much needed break. You can even skip a payment every 6 months, up to 12 times without penalty. Who does that? I mean, really, who goes as far as to help you out in that regard? You don't have to ignore that mountain of student loan statements on your kitchen table anymore. Just call 888-YREFI 85. That's 888-YREFI 85, or log on to yrefi.com. That's yrefi.com. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope that you enjoyed the show and the truth around the fact that we have enemies from without and we have enemies from within. And so within that, we need spiritual discernment to know what's true and what's false, what's wholesome and where the poison lies. We have to be discerning, because if we don't, we'll look around and the freedoms and the liberties that we have, our ability to assemble in places of worship, void of big daddy government, big God government lording over us. These things will be lost. But no, I think there's a righteous 7,000 out there who's willing to draw the line in the sand and say, not on my watch. Do me a favor and go everywhere where podcasts can be listened to. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and set your notifications. And when this goes live, smash the thumbs up icon. Will you? I mean, will you? Will you do it for your brother from another mother? God bless you. God bless America. We're signing off from YRefi Studios. Take care.